She paid for first class. She earned it. She belonged there. So why did they ask her to leave? Have you ever witnessed someone being erased not loudly, but with a smile, a policy, and a seat reassignment? This is the story of Dr. Elise Monroe, a brilliant tech CEO, a diamond elite flyer, a woman who's changed lives across the country, yet still found herself removed from her seat on a plane to make room for someone. Wider, louder, more connected. But what if that moment of humiliation sparked a storm no airline could contain? What if one calm refusal to move cracked open a system built on silent compliance? Why did the staff protect the entitled passenger instead of the woman who did everything right? What happens when dignity chooses not to step aside, and what does justice look like at 30,000 feet? This isn't just about a seat. It's about who gets to feel safe, respected, and seen. Stay with us, because what started in Seat 1A became a national reckoning. If this story moves you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Now, let's begin. The hum of early morning life in New Orleans hadn't quite risen yet, but the light filtering through the sheer curtains of Elise Monroe's condo suggested the day would be clear. She sat at her kitchen counter, swirling a silver spoon in a ceramic cup of ginger tea, eyes scanning her phone screen. Her boarding pass glowed softly, Aerolux Airlines Flight 2187 Seat 1A. A quiet smile played on her lips. It wasn't just another trip, it was a convergence. Today, Elise was flying to Seattle to deliver the keynote speech at the National Health Innovation Summit, where her AI-based health equity startup, Curaloop, would be honored for its transformative impact in underserved communities. She would also meet with Orion Capital, one of the largest VC firms in the country. They were interested not just in her tech, but in her, and that, she knew, was rare. Elise closed her laptop and set her cup down. With practiced grace, she reached for her travel blazer, deep plum wool, tailored to her silhouette, and checked her pockets, phone, passport, confidence. Her suitcase clicked closed behind her as she rolled it into the elevator. On the ride down, she caught a glimpse of herself in the chrome reflection. Neatly coiled hair, pearl earrings, eyes alert. There was something elegant but grounded in her posture, like a woman who had learned, over and over, how to stand tall. Outside, the Uber driver greeted her with a smile and took her bag. "Airport," he asked. "Clearview International, Terminal B," she replied. The ride was mostly quiet, save for the faint jazz playing on the car stereo. Elise leaned her head against the window, letting the blur of early traffic wash past her. Her thoughts drifted to her mother, Yvonne, who had once worked 2 jobs and still made time to sit with Elise every evening, guiding her through homework while cooking red beans and rice. Her mother never had much, but she gave Elise her spine and her fire. "Baby," she used to say, "you walk into any room like you belong there, 'cause you do, even if they try to act surprised." Elise had carried those words with her through every boardroom, pitch deck, and article that labeled her a trailblazer. Still, even at 39, she knew success didn't always shield you from scrutiny, especially in spaces that weren't built with people like her in mind. At the airport, check-in was smooth. Her assistant, Amira, had arranged everything: lounge access, expedited screening, even her preferred in-flight meal. As Elise moved through the clear security line, a TSA agent scanned her ID, pausing for a moment longer than necessary. "Dr. Monroe?" he asked, brow furrowed. "That's me," she replied, her voice light but precise. He nodded, stamped her boarding pass, and let her through without another word. Small things. She'd learned to file them away, like pebbles in a jar, individually insignificant, collectively exhausting. The walk to the Aerolux VIP lounge took her past clusters of travelers' families in sweats, business types glued to laptops, couples half awake on morning flights. Elise caught fragments of conversations, the shuffle of feet, the scent of cinnamon pretzels curling from a kiosk nearby. She felt calm. She loved the liminal nature of airports, the sense of being between destinations, the soft urgency of movement. At the lounge entrance, a young receptionist glanced up. "Good morning. Welcome to Aerolux Premier." Elise handed over her digital pass. "Dr. Elise Monroe," she said, smiling gently. The woman's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, first polite, then momentarily confused, and then back to polite. "Of course, Dr. Monroe. You're in our first elite cabin today. Please enjoy the lounge. Flight 2187 is on time." Elise stepped into the lounge. Plush leather chairs, muted lighting, and soft jazz filled the space. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the tarmac. A few travelers murmured over mimosas or clacked away at laptops. She chose a quiet corner near a window and settled in with a cup of chamomile tea. Her phone buzzed. Amira Orion Capital is sending their VP to the summit. Game face on. And check your email, press interview request just came in. Elise smiled. She replied, "Tell them I'll be ready, and tell the VP to buckle up." She sipped her tea slowly, letting herself savor the moment. There was something sacred about a morning like this when everything felt poised, ready, like the hush before takeoff, and yet, somewhere in the folds of her mind, she felt a quiet unease she couldn't quite name. Not fear, exactly, just a ripple, a presence of something unspoken. Something about today felt heavier. She shook it off, turned back to her notes for the summit, and glanced once more at her boarding pass 1A, a front row seat to the sky. She had no idea what turbulence, both literal and metaphorical, awaited her beyond the gate. The boarding area outside Gate B-17 had begun to stir. Announcements crackled over the intercom, some clear, others muffled like underwater messages. Passengers shifted restlessly in their seats, clutching coffee cups and carry-ons. Elise remained in the lounge, her boarding time still half an hour away, but something in the air made her uneasy. She stood by the panoramic window, watching as a line of luggage carts curved toward the underbelly of a sleek Aerolux A350, her aircraft, the Seattle-bound bird that would carry her into a pivotal chapter of her career. Her phone vibrated again, another message from Amira. Amira boarding confirmed. "Just got word Orion's VP, Jacob Lynn, is on your flight." Not in first, though. They booked him late. Interesting, right? Elise read it twice, then smiled faintly. Interesting indeed. She glanced around the lounge. It had filled up since she arrived. Two businessmen argued in hushed tones over a spreadsheet on a tablet. A mother fed her toddler mashed fruit. A blonde woman in a cream trench coat paced slowly with her phone pressed to her ear, speaking loudly about a conference in Napa. No one looked particularly threatening or extraordinary. Still, Elise felt eyes on her. Subtle things, shifts in tone, tension wrapped in civility. "Excuse me," Miss A-Man's voice pulled her attention. It belonged to a uniformed lounge attendant, early 30s, clean-cut, slightly stiff. His name tag read Dane, Yes, Elise asked, her voice even. I just wanted to verify your seat assignment, if that's all right. Something tightened in her chest. Is there a problem? No, not at all, Dane said quickly, but didn't quite meet her eyes. Just a routine cross-check. Some seat reshuffling happening across the first elite cabin. Elise pulled out her phone and brought up her boarding pass again. Seat 1A, checked in 2 hours ago. Dane glanced at the screen. Yes, of course. Thank you, Dr. Monroe. Then he turned and walked briskly toward the reception desk, where 2 other staff members had begun whispering again. Elise watched them. One of the women, dark-haired, thin-lipped, clipboard in hand, gave her a look that Elise had seen before. The kind that tries to assess your worth without asking your name. The kind that says, you don't quite fit here, but I won't say it out loud. It's starting, Elise thought. She felt it in her ribs. Not panic, not even fear, but the old ache. That low, humming awareness she'd learned to live with. The one that followed her into banks, 5-star hotels, panel interviews. That told her they don't always see you the way you see yourself. She exhaled slowly. She took her tea back to her chair and tapped her foot against her bag. Her heart beat steadily, but her thoughts flickered. Maybe they overbooked. Maybe there's a politician on board, or a diplomat, or someone's brother who threatened to call a senator. Maybe it has nothing to do with me. She wanted to believe that, but her gut told her otherwise. Her phone buzzed again this time. A news alert. Breaking FAA, investigating discriminatory practices in VIP air travel sector. Elise laughed under her breath. How poetic. As she glanced back up, she caught the eye of a young black woman across the lounge. She was dressed in navy scrubs, her hair tied back, scrolling her phone absently. When their eyes met, the woman gave Elise a small nod. It wasn't overt, it wasn't performative. It simply said, I see you. Elise returned the nod almost imperceptibly. The receptionist approached next. Elise noted the same tense smile as before. Dr. Monroe. I wanted to let you know that boarding for your flight will begin shortly. First-class passengers will be called momentarily. Please feel free to proceed at your leisure. There was something about the delivery, too rehearsed, too quick. Thank you, Elise said. Any changes to the seating arrangement? The receptionist blinked. Not that I've been informed. Ma'am. Elise tilted her head. Ma'am. The use of that word was supposed to sound respectful, but here it felt distancing, like a wall politely being built. No confirmation, no denial. She glanced once more at the boarding pass glowing on her screen. Seat 1A. 15 minutes later, the first boarding call echoed through the speakers. Aerolux Flight 2187 to Seattle, now boarding First Elite passengers, military, and those needing additional assistance. Elise stood, gathered her coat, and adjusted the strap on her laptop bag. As she stepped out of the lounge and headed toward Gate B-17, she walked with practiced calm, as she always did in spaces of tension, not arrogance, not defiance, just presence, because presence, when denied, becomes a protest in itself. The boarding ramp to Gate B-17 gleamed under LED lighting, a modern hallway to the sky lined with branded posters and recycled air chill. Elise walked with quiet poise, laptop bag snug on her shoulder, passport in hand. Flight attendants stood at the gate podium, scanning devices ready, postures professional. A young woman in a red Aerolux blazer greeted her. First Elite, she asked. Elise smiled, presenting her pass. Dr. Elise Monroe, seat 1A. The attendant nodded, but her smile was the kind that vanished as quickly as it appeared. She whispered something into her shoulder mic and handed Elise her boarding slip, right down the bridge. Welcome aboard. Elise thanked her and stepped forward. The jet bridge curved slightly, revealing the open plane door. There, just inside the aircraft, stood another uniformed flight attendant, Emily, according to her name tag. Her posture was firm, her expression unreadable. Good morning, Dr. Monroe, she said. May I check your boarding pass again? Elise raised an eyebrow. She offered it, keeping her tone neutral. Of course. Emily glanced at it, then at her tablet. Something flickered in her eyes. Uncertainty. Recognition. You're in 1A, she asked, even though it was written in black and white. I am, Elise replied. Emily nodded, stepping aside to let her board. Right this way. Let us know if you need anything. It was polite, but clipped. Too rehearsed. Too careful. The First Elite cabin was a quiet cocoon of luxury 8 wide seats, ivory leather, walnut-paneled dividers. Soft, ambient lighting glowed from beneath the footrests. Elise strolled to the front, where Seat 1A awaited a window seat with extra leg room, a privacy shell, and a crisp folded blanket. She stored her bag overhead and sat down, adjusting the lumbar support and pulling out her tablet. Across the aisle, a middle-aged white man settled into 1B. His gray linen suit was creased from travel, and he was already on his phone. Elise gave him a polite nod. He didn't return it. No matter. She took a breath, opening her notes for the keynote. Equity in health tech, designing for the margins first. She'd practiced it a dozen times, knew every beat, but for some reason, she was having trouble focusing. She couldn't shake the subtle warning signs she'd felt since the lounge. Minutes passed. More First Elite passengers filtered in. A couple, white, well-dressed, murmuring in French, took their seats behind her. A sharply dressed Asian woman settled into 2A. But it was when Elise noticed the whispered conversation near the front galley that her spine tingled. 3 crew members stood together, speaking in hushed tones. One of them pointed discreetly but unmistakably in her direction. Another smirked. Elise watched them from her peripheral vision. Her jaw tightened. She'd seen this dance before, not just in airports, in job interviews, in exclusive hotels, at board meetings where she was the only woman of color in the room. There was a choreography to doubt how it moved silently through whispers, passed between glances, always just beneath the surface. 10 minutes before takeoff. Emily returned. Dr. Monroe, she said softly, may I ask you to step into the galley with me? There's a small issue with your seat. Elise looked up slowly, her tablet still glowing. What kind of issue? Emily paused. It's just a quick clarification, nothing serious. Elise stood, her heart suddenly heavy in her chest. She followed Emily into the galley, where another staff member, a younger man named Derek, waited. His arms were crossed. I'm sorry, he began, his voice tight. But we've just had a last-minute reassignment request. There's a government-connected diamond passenger on board, and we're instructed to accommodate him in seat 1A. Elise blinked. I booked 1A a week ago, she said, confirmed, verified, and I'm a Diamond Elite member myself. Yes, ma'am, Derek said. We see that, but the other passenger holds a higher protocol status. We've reassigned you to business class. Seat 4B. Elise didn't speak right away. She looked from one face to the other. "So, I'm being moved?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. "Yes," Emily said. "Just a few rows back. You'll still receive premium service." Elise inhaled slowly. Not again, she thought. Not the dance. Not the downgrading dressed in velvet language. "I'd like to speak to a supervisor," she said. "There isn't one currently available on board," Derek said, "and we need to finish boarding." Elise studied his face. She thought of every flight she'd taken in silence, every seat she'd accepted without complaint, every time she swallowed indignity for the sake of grace. But today, she felt something different stirring in her chest. Resolve, not rage, just refusal. She folded her arms gently. "I'm not giving up my seat. I paid for it, I confirmed it, and I've done nothing wrong." Emily and Derek exchanged a glance. Emily's lips pressed into a thin line. "Please return to your seat for now," she said. "We'll be back shortly." Elise turned without a word and walked back down an aisle. But this time, when she sat, her hands were shaking. Across from her, the man in 1B finally looked over. "What's the fuss?" he asked, tone casual but laced with amusement. "Apparently," Elise said quietly, "someone thinks they're more entitled to this seat than I am." The man chuckled, as if that made perfect sense. Elise faced forward, her fingers curling around the edge of the armrest. Something is coming, she thought, and she wasn't going to shrink when it arrived. The overhead bins snapped shut with finality. The cabin crew moved briskly through First Elite, their clipped tones and polite rehearsals flowing like background static. Elise sat in 1A, legs crossed, hands resting on her lap, outwardly composed, inwardly. Her thoughts roiled. They hadn't returned yet. Emily or Derek. But the boarding doors were minutes from closing. The unease she'd felt in the lounge had now crystallized into something clearer. This was no logistical mix-up. It was erasure with a laminated smile. She remembered something her mother had told her when she was a teenager and came home in tears after a classmate made a racist joke in science class. "They don't have to raise their voice to push you out," Yvonne had said. "Sometimes they just change your seat when you're not looking." "Elise." She looked up. Emily was back, joined this time by a third attendant, an older man with salt and pepper hair and a voice that dripped with faux authority. "My name is Paul. I'm the cabin supervisor for this flight." He said, "I understand there's been some confusion about your seat assignment." "No confusion," Elise said evenly. "I booked this seat, I checked in early, and no one has explained to me why I'm being asked to move." Paul offered a tight smile. "Sometimes high-security guests or federal affiliates are granted last-minute priority. The system isn't perfect, but we follow protocol. I'm a Diamond Elite passenger," Elise said, "and a paid First Elite ticket holder. What protocol puts me beneath someone else?" Paul's smile faltered. "It's not personal, that phrase, that cheap shield." "Then explain to me," Elise said softly, "why the person being removed happens to be the only black woman in this cabin." Paul stiffened. Emily looked away. The silence after her words wasn't awkward, it was surgical. "Elise, if you would please take Seat 4B in business class," Paul continued, his tone harder now. "We'd like to finish boarding without delay." Elise glanced around. The white man in 1B raised an eyebrow, listening with subtle curiosity. The French couple behind her lowered their voices. Everyone knew something was happening. No one would speak. She closed her eyes briefly. She wanted to scream, not because she'd been bumped, but because the situation was so tired, so familiar, so perfectly rehearsed by people who had never had to explain their right to be. Do I make a scene? Do I give them what they want? An excuse to call me aggressive? No. She wouldn't give them the story they were looking for, but she also wouldn't give them the seat. She opened her eyes. What happens if I say no? Emily hesitated. Paul didn't. Then we'll need to involve the gate manager, and that could lead to a delay and possible removal from the flight. So I either give up my seat willingly, Elise said, or I'm branded a disturbance. You're misunderstanding the situation, Paul said. No, Elise said quietly. I'm seeing it clearly. Emily knelt slightly to meet her eye level. Dr. Monroe, please. I understand this is frustrating. We're not trying to insult you. I'm not looking for apologies. Elise replied, I'm looking for fairness. But fairness, it seemed, was not on the flight plan today. She sighed, then reached for her bag. Emily exhaled in relief. Thank you. Elise rose slowly, every motion deliberate. As she stepped into the aisle, she caught the eyes of the man replacing her white, mid-50s, silver cufflinks, thin blue tie. He gave her a half-smile and offered nothing, no acknowledgement, no sorry about this, just entitlement, pure and undiluted. Seat 4B in business class was narrower, closer to the aisle, and missing the privacy shell she'd expected to review her keynote. She sat down without a word, legs tight, posture rigid, a few rows back. A woman wearing oversized sunglasses had already claimed the window seat in 4A. Her carry-on bag overflowed onto Elise's armrest, and her Chanel tote was wedged between their seats. She didn't glance up. The humiliation sat heavy in Elise's throat. She wanted to cry, but crying felt like giving in to something deeper, something she'd been resisting since childhood. Not today. She texted Amira. They just moved me from 1A to 4B. Said it was protocol. Amira replied instantly. What, are you serious? You want me to call Aerolux Corporate? Let me go nuclear? Elise typed, then deleted, then typed again. Hold for now. Just watch their systems. Something's wrong here. Then she glanced over at the woman next to her, still silent, still occupying space that wasn't hers. Elise leaned back and closed her eyes, but her pulse beat louder than the safety announcements overhead. And deep inside, something was beginning to break. Not Elise. The illusion. The seatbelt sign blinked overhead, casting a gentle white glow against the navy interior of the business class cabin. Elise sat rigid in 4B, her back barely touching the seat. Her fingers rested lightly on her thigh. She hadn't unpacked her tablet, her water bottle, or even buckled in. Next to her, the woman in 4A sipped sparkling water like it was a victory toast. The tote bag between their seats was still wedged deep into Elise's space. Elise had shifted slightly, trying to reclaim her armrest, but the other woman hadn't moved, hadn't apologized, hadn't even acknowledged her. And now, a new discomfort joined the cramped seat and silence. Entitlement, bold, unmasked. Excuse me, Elise said gently, motioning toward the tote. Would you mind sliding your bag a little? I don't have much space. The woman didn't look at her. She took another sip, then lowered her sunglasses just enough to reveal pale blue eyes rimmed with disdain. You'll be fine, she said flatly. It's just a bag. Elise blinked. I understand, but this is my seat. I'd like to sit comfortably." The woman smirked. "Then maybe you should have stayed up front." The words stung more than Elise expected. It wasn't the insult. It was the way it was delivered offhand, almost amused, like she was being reminded, with polite cruelty, that this space had never truly been for her. Elise drew in a slow breath. "Ma'am," she said, calmly but clearly, "please move your bag." That drew attention. The businessman across the aisle glanced up. A pair of 20-somethings in row 5 stopped their whispering. Elise could feel the air tightening around her. This was the moment the game changed. "I'm not moving it," the woman snapped. "There's plenty of space. If you have a problem, ask the flight attendant." A beat passed. Then, loud enough for several rows to hear, she added, "You people always need something to complain about." Elise's ears rang. The phrase echoed like a slap, not shouted, just tossed like dirty laundry onto a clean floor. She stood, not abruptly, not with fire. She simply rose with deliberate grace, like gravity had ceased applying to her. The flight attendant, Emily, was already heading down the aisle. "Is there an issue here?" Emily asked, voice high with tension. Elise turned to her. "She's refusing to move her belongings from my space and has made several inappropriate comments." Emily looked from Elise to the woman in 4A, whose sunglasses had migrated to her hair now, revealing flushed cheeks and narrowed eyes. "I didn't say anything inappropriate," the woman said quickly. "She's exaggerating." Elise didn't break eye contact. "You said, and I quote, 'You people always need something to complain about.'" Gasps fluttered in row 5. Emily's mouth opened, then closed. For a brief moment, Elise wondered what she looked like from the outside. A well-dressed black woman, now displaced twice on the same flight. Calm, composed, yet radiating hurt beneath the surface. She wondered what the passengers thought. Did they think she was making trouble? Did they think she was difficult, or did they see it? Did they see the pattern? Emily leaned in, voice lowered. "Dr. Monroe, can we step into the galley again? I'd like to speak with you privately." Elise almost laughed. "Of course you would. Always in private, always behind the curtain, where discomfort doesn't spill into the aisle. I'd rather address this here," she said calmly. "This is escalating," Emily replied, casting a nervous glance at the other passengers. "Please." Elise hesitated. She looked around. Eyes were watching, some sympathetic, others wary, but none of them moved, none spoke. She'd been alone in rooms like this before. She was used to it. She rose again, stepping aside, allowing Emily to lead her to the galley near the rear of business class. The hum of the engines grew louder here, filling the silence that Emily couldn't seem to break. "Finally," she said, "look, I'm really sorry, but Miss Cunningham says she feels unsafe. She's alleging that you raised your voice and made her uncomfortable." Elise blinked, stunned. "I asked her to move her bag. I know," Emily replied quickly. "But if a passenger claims they feel unsafe, we have to de-escalate. It's airline policy." Elise's laugh came out more as breath than sound. "You're telling me I might be removed because she's uncomfortable." With me asking for my seat back, Emily looked pained. "You haven't done anything wrong, but we have limited options. If this continues, we'll have to ask you to take another seat." Again, Elise asked softly. A long silence stretched between them. Elise placed a hand on the wall to steady herself. She could feel her pulse in her fingertips now. Her mind churned not just with anger, but with something deeper disbelief. How many times must I prove I belong? How many times must I shrink to keep others comfortable? She thought of her speech in Seattle, of the kid she mentored back home, of Amira, probably pacing with fury on the other end of her phone, and of her mother. Always her mother. Never forget who you are. Don't let them write you out of your own story. I won't move again, Elise said at last. I understand, Emily said, but her voice was small. No, I don't think you do, Elise added, but you will. She turned and walked out of the galley with quiet resolve, leaving Emily staring after her. Back in her seat, Miss Cunningham refused to meet her eyes. Elise sat down, straightened her spine, and waited, because this time she was ready. Elise sat back in seat 4B, hands folded, gaze fixed straight ahead. The silence in business class had shifted. It wasn't casual anymore, it was electric, charged with the kind of stillness that comes before a storm. A hush stretched over the rows like a curtain, and behind it, judgment brewed. A few rows ahead, a man angled his phone discreetly toward her row. Another passenger coughed to mask the click of a recording app. The performance was no longer private. Elise was no longer invisible, and she knew from experience that visibility was a double-edged sword. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't fidget. She simply waited. Karen Langford in 4A crossed her legs slowly, loudly, as if to reassert her control over the narrow boundary between them. Are we really going to drag this out? She muttered, eyes fixed on her phone screen now. It's a seat, not a civil rights movement. A man in 4C across the aisle turned his head. She asked you to move your bag. That's not dragging anything. Karen scoffed. Don't insert yourself into this. But it was too late. The cabin wasn't hers anymore. The room had shifted, and people were watching. Karen added, louder this time. She's just trying to make a scene. God forbid someone else gets to sit in the front. Elise said nothing. She didn't have to. A tall flight attendant with sharp features Nathan approached next, glancing between Elise and Karen. I understand there's been a disagreement, he said neutrally. She's harassing me. Karen snapped before Elise could speak. I already told the other attendant. I feel threatened. Nathan looked stunned for a half second. Threatened? How she's confrontational, Karen said, adjusting her sweater. And she's making this racial. I don't feel safe sitting next to someone who's accusing me of whatever she thinks I did. Elise raised a brow but kept her mouth shut. She looked directly at Nathan. I asked her to move her bag off my seat space. She refused. That's the extent of my confrontation. Nathan paused. Do you have your boarding pass? Elise held it up. Karen looked away. Nathan tapped his tablet, his eyes scanning data. Then he frowned. You're seated in 4B, Dr. Monroe, and you, ma'am. He turned to Karen, are listed in 4A. Karen flipped her hair. That's what I said. She can stay in her little seat. She was seated in 1A originally. Elise added quietly. I was reassigned without explanation. Nathan's brows lifted. You're a first elite passenger, Diamond Elite, Elise replied. The words landed with weight. A few murmurs rippled down the row. Nathan's eyes darted toward the front of the cabin. His demeanor changed, tightened. Give me a moment, he said, and disappeared into the galley. Karen sat back smugly. This is what happens when people don't know their place. That was it. A woman 2 rows back stood abruptly. Ma'am, that's enough, she said sharply. You've made your point, and it's a disgusting one. Karen's face reddened. Excuse me, you heard me. You've disrespected her repeatedly, and I've sat here watching it. We all have. The woman turned to Elise. You don't owe her your silence. Another voice chimed in, a man behind them. I've been recording this whole time. Just FYI. Karen twisted in her seat. You can't do that. That's illegal. No, he said calmly. Not in a public setting like this, especially not if it's evidence of discrimination. Elise didn't move. Her voice was steady when she finally spoke. I didn't come here to start anything. I came here to fly to a city where I'm delivering a keynote to a room full of leaders. But I will not be moved again because someone like her thinks my presence is threatening. Karen opened her mouth, but Nathan returned before she could reply. He leaned into Elise. Dr. Monroe, I've spoken with the flight crew lead. We're in a difficult spot. Miss Langford is now alleging emotional distress because I asked her to respect my seat. Nathan winced. She's claiming she won't calm down until you're reseated. Then don't let her fly, said the woman behind them. Exactly, the man with the phone added. She's the one refusing to comply. Nathan hesitated. He looked genuinely torn. The pilot wants the cabin secured. We're past pushback time. We're being pressured to resolve this immediately. By removing me, Elise asked. His silence said enough. Emily appeared again, this time red-faced and tense. We need to make a call. Nathan looked at Elise. We can rebook you on a later flight. We'll compensate you fully. Or we can offer a seat in economy, an exit row, if that helps. The words hit Elise like a weight in her chest. From first elite to business to economy. Not because of a mistake, because of who she was, because she didn't shrink, because someone else was allowed to be loud, unreasonable, and wrong, and still protected. Elise stood slowly. The air was thick with judgment. The cabin was silent except for the hum of the engines and the quiet breaths of people waiting to see what she'd do. She looked at Karen one last time, then at Nathan, then at Emily. No, she said, I will not sit in economy. I will not be rebooked. Then we'll have to remove you. Emily whispered, looking near tears. Elise nodded. Do what you need to do. But no, this isn't over. As she gathered her bag, the woman from row 6 reached out and squeezed her arm gently. You're not alone, she said. The man across the aisle added, They'll regret this. Phones captured Elise walking back down the aisle. Head high, shoulders square, dignity intact. The announcement rang out through the speakers. Cabin doors will close in approximately 2 minutes. All passengers, please be seated and fasten your seat belts. But Elise Monroe was standing shoulders back, bag in hand. Her first elite seat a memory now. Her dignity pressed against the weight of compliance. Nathan and Emily flanked her like escorts, not hostile, just resigned. Dr. Monroe, Nathan said in a voice barely above a whisper. The gate manager is waiting to speak with you just outside. Elise looked over her shoulder once, back toward the rows of faces. Some looked away. Others met her gaze with silent solidarity. A few held phones in trembling hands, recording, bearing witness. She turned back to the exit and walked. Not because she accepted what was happening, but because she understood something bigger had just been set into motion. The jet bridge felt colder than when she boarded. Elise stepped through it slowly, each footstep reverberating in her mind like a challenge. You could have stayed quiet. You could have taken that seat in economy. You could have smiled and swallowed it like you've done before. But not this time. No more shrinking. At the end of the bridge stood a stocky man in a gray Aerolux blazer. Gordon. His name tag read, arms crossed, eyes cast downward as if reading her presence off a script. "We've arranged a rebooking desk for you just down the corridor," he said. Elise stopped walking. No explanation. No apology. Gordon shifted uncomfortably. "It's been escalated? Someone from corporate may be in touch." She stared at him, then reached into her bag, pulled out her phone, and dialed. The ring barely completed once before Amira picked up. "Elise, I've been removed. What they took me off the flight for being inconvenient." Amira's voice sharpened. "I'm calling our legal team now, and the media desk. You okay?" Elise glanced back at the sealed door of the plane, then at the gate manager pretending to look busy on his tablet. "I will be," she said. In the terminal, passengers milled about, oblivious. The normal rhythm of air travel pulsed around her boarding calls, stroller wheels, rolling suitcases, but for Elise, the moment felt suspended in amber, heavy, exposed. She sat down on a bench just beyond the gate and allowed herself to feel it. Not rage, but something deeper. Hurt. Disbelief. The betrayal of a system that smiled at her money, her status, her loyalty, then reminded her, under pressure, who it really served. Her phone vibrated again. "Amira, I've already emailed legal. Also flagged this to Orion's VP, since he was supposed to be on your flight. He's furious." "Good," Elise said. She paused, her voice lower now. "Do you think I made the wrong call?" Not backing down, Amira was silent for a beat. Then, "No, you did exactly what had to be done." Elise exhaled. Her voice wavered slightly. "I feel like I lost something back there." "No," Amira replied. "You reminded them what they never had the right to take." 20 minutes later, Elise was on a different flight, this time rerouted through Denver, less direct, more expensive. She didn't flinch at the price, but before boarding, she took out her laptop and typed for 20 minutes straight. A timeline, names, descriptions, passenger quotes. She included everything, every exchange, every refusal, every glance that told her she didn't belong. She saved it, then forwarded the document to Amira and Gwen Ramirez, her longtime contact at the Department of Transportation. Subject: formal complaint. Aerolux Flight 2187, attachment: full incident report. Then she closed the laptop and waited for her boarding call. As she boarded the new plane, the flight attendant smiled warmly and gestured to her seat in business class. "Welcome aboard, Dr. Monroe. No tension, no forced politeness, just a calm, respectful greeting." It felt like oxygen. She didn't mention what had happened earlier. She didn't need to. But as she settled into her seat, she felt something new brewing inside her. Not vindictiveness, determination. Because now, the story didn't belong to Aerolux anymore. It belonged to her. And soon, it would belong to the world. The moment Elise's connecting flight touched down in Denver, her phone lit up with notifications, calls missed, texts unread, emails multiplying like raindrops on glass. She remained seated as the seatbelt sign chimed off, letting the rest of the passengers file out. She needed a second longer to reorient herself. The plane might have landed, but the fallout from Flight 2187 had just taken off. She unlocked her phone. A flurry of messages from Amira sat at the top. "The video is spreading. You're on 3 major aviation watchdog forums. Someone tagged Aerolux's official account. They haven't responded yet. Call me." Also, Gwen replied. Elise swallowed hard and pressed dial. Amira picked up on the first ring. "You've gone viral. I was afraid of that," Elise said, voice hoarse. "What's out there?" "There's a 30-second clip. You standing in the aisle while the staff tell you to take another seat, and then you saying, 'I've done nothing wrong, but you're asking me to disappear so someone else feels comfortable.' That line, it hit. It's everywhere." Elise ran a hand down her face. "I wasn't trying to make a scene." "I know," Amira said gently. "That's what makes it powerful. You were calm, and they still removed you." A beat passed between them. Elise's voice quieted. "Does it look like I lost control?" "Not even a little," Amira said. "It looks like they panicked when they saw you weren't going to disappear quietly." An email pinged in. "Gwen Ramirez, DOT Office of Aviation Oversight, Elise. I just received your complaint and reviewed the attached notes. Based on the preliminary details, there may be violations of federal bumping procedures, discriminatory treatment, and mishandling of elite passenger status. I've opened an inquiry. Can you confirm names, flight numbers, and any witnesses? Also, do you know if the airline has contacted you yet?" Gwen Elise read it twice, then wrote back immediately. "Gwen, names confirmed. I've attached a witness list with email addresses. No contact from Aerolux yet. Thank you for moving quickly. Elise Monroe." She hit send, then she sat back in her seat, phone still warm in her hand. Her inbox buzzed again, this time from an unfamiliar address. Subject: Re-Media Inquiry. Statement from Dr. Elise Monroe. A reporter from a well-known tech and social equity blog had picked up the video. They wanted a quote, something short, centered not on revenge, but on meaning. Elise thought carefully, then typed, "This isn't just about one seat on one plane. It's about who gets protected and who gets asked to step aside. Every time I fly, I carry my credentials, my success, and still, I'm treated like a threat the moment I stand my ground. Dignity shouldn't require negotiation. Dr. Elise Monroe." She hesitated before hitting send. Then she did. Back in New Orleans, Amira was already coordinating. She had created a private folder for legal records, screenshots, witness testimonies. The woman from Row 6, Leah Phelps, had sent in a written statement. The man from across the aisle, Devin Mills, had provided the full video file and a detailed account. They weren't just sympathizers. They were now part of Elise's proof. Elise opened a new tab, searched for Aerolux Airlines on Twitter. The results were already moving fast. Comments, retweets, reactions. Travel with Tiff. How do you boot a black woman from first class who paid for her seat and say it's protocol? This is why we keep receipts. Real Aviation Watch. Aerolux is about to learn the hard way that cameras are always rolling. Elise Monroe. Seat not for sale. Aerolux disgrace. Elise stared at the screen. Her name, rising like a flag on a battlefield she never meant to enter, but now that she was here, she wasn't backing down. By the time she reached Seattle 3 hours late, she had 3 interview requests, 1 voicemail from a civil rights attorney offering representation, and a second email from Gwen. Elise. DOT has requested internal flight documentation from Aerolux. Also, we're reviewing their handling of First Elite reassignments. That language used by their crew, troubling. More soon. Gwen. The phrase troubling stuck with her. It always started that way. Then the truth came out. At baggage claim. Elise checked her messages one last time. Still nothing from Aerolux, not even a form email, but silence, she knew, was its own form of confession. It meant they didn't know what to say. Yet, and when they did, she would be ready. At Aerolux's corporate headquarters in Charlotte, North Carolina, the mood was far from business as usual. The executive floor was tense, emails flying, calls overlapping, assistant phones lighting up like a switchboard during a storm. And in a sleek, glass-walled corner office, Mitchell Crane, the airline's CEO, watched a grainy 34-second clip on his tablet for the fourth time. In it, Dr. Elise Monroe stood calmly in the aisle of Flight 2187 flanked by attendants. She wasn't shouting, she wasn't disruptive. Her voice was quiet, piercingly so. "I've done nothing wrong, but you're asking me to disappear so someone else feels comfortable." That sentence. It was being quoted in news articles, on blogs, and in internal Slack threads where junior employees were already wondering, did we mess up? "Mitchell," came a voice behind him. It was Julia Reyes, VP of Corporate Affairs, tablet clutched tight to her chest. "We've got a problem," she said. He turned slowly. "Just one," she sighed. "3, maybe 4. She rattled them off. "1 dot has issued an inquiry request. Gwen Ramirez is leading it." Mitchell rubbed his temples. 2, our own internal logs contradict the crew's reports. Dr. Monroe's reassignment wasn't flagged as protocol-based. It was manually overridden. And 3, he asked, already dreading it. "The passenger in 1A, turns out he's nobody." Mitchell blinked. "Excuse me, not government, not a VIP, just someone with connections to one of our regional directors." Apparently, he called in a favor, and someone on the ground pushed the override. "Jesus," Mitchell muttered. In the corner of the room, another voice chimed in. Daniel Wu, General Counsel for the airline. "We have 4 witness statements already shared online. All corroborate Elise Monroe's version. 2 passengers even named crew members specifically. Have we reached out to her?" Mitchell asked. Julia hesitated. "No. We were waiting on legal to draft. She was Diamond Elite." Mitchell snapped. "She spent over $60,000 on our airline last year, and we haven't even sent her a statement." "She already filed a formal complaint with the DOT," Daniel said grimly. "We'll be lucky if this doesn't become a federal investigation." Mitchell tossed the tablet onto his desk. "I want names. Who was on that flight crew?" Julia swiped through her tablet. Cabin Supervisor Paul Harding, Lead Flight Attendant Emily Cross, Support Staff Derek Mason and Nathan Sterling, Ground Lounge Agents James Delaney, Bianca Ford, Gate Manager Gordon Riles, and the passenger who refused to move her bag, Karen Langford, local socialite, no actual elite status, claimed her husband worked with our finance team. We haven't confirmed that yet. Mitchell leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowed. She told our staff she felt unsafe. And that got a Diamond Elite customer removed. Daniel nodded. "It's all in the statements," Julia added quietly. "There's footage, too. Passenger behind Elise filmed Karen saying she can sit in her little seat. And people like her always need something to complain about. It's not good." "Mitch?" "No," he said. "It's not." Meanwhile, inside Aerolux's Crisis Comms war room, analysts tracked hashtags in real time. Elise Monroe, trending in 4 metro regions, Our Seat Not For Sale, retweeted by a prominent civil rights lawyer, Aerolux Disgrace, approaching 120,000 posts. The airline's brand trust index was dropping hourly. Mitchell Crane called an emergency meeting. Effective immediately. Suspend all staff involved pending investigation. I want HR reviewing every piece of documentation from that flight. Audio, video, even lounge logs. What about Miss Monroe? Julia asked. I'll reach out to her personally. Today. We wait longer. We lose the narrative, Daniel added. And if she sues, then we lose the lawsuit, too, at that very hour. Elise sat in a quiet corner of a hotel lobby in Seattle, her laptop open, legal pad filled with scribbled notes. She had just finished giving her keynote at the National Health Innovation Summit. The applause had been long, standing, emotional, not because of her company, because of her composure, because of her courage, because everyone knew. Her phone buzzed. A new number, corporate line. She let it ring 3 times before answering. Elise Monroe. A pause. Elise, this is Mitchell Crane, CEO of Aerolux Airlines. First, I want to personally apologize. Her silence on the other end was not rude. It was powerful. I saw the footage. Mitchell continued. I read the Doughty complaint. There's no excuse for what happened. I want to speak directly with you to discuss resolution. Now you want to talk, Elise said softly. We're also conducting an internal investigation, he added quickly. The individuals involved have been placed on leave. Resolution, Elise repeated, starts with recognition. I want that in writing. I want your policies. I want the names. And I want more than flight credit. You'll have all of it, Mitchell said. You have my word. You'll need more than that. She replied. Then she hung up. Aerolux Airlines prided itself on luxury, in the sky's refined cabins, curated lounge experiences, a brand built on exclusivity. But inside the company's downtown Charlotte headquarters, that polish was flaking fast. The internal investigation had unearthed something uglier than a single misstep. It had exposed a pattern. In a stark conference room lined with binders, HR executives, legal teams, and crisis managers sat around a table strewn with transcripts and incident logs. At the head sat Mitchell Crane, CEO, his expression grim. Walk me through what we know, he ordered. Julia Reyes, VP of Corporate Affairs, flipped through her notes. First, the initial seat reassignment was not system-generated. Bianca Ford, one of the lounge staff, manually removed Dr. Monroe from 1A. No executive override, no documented cause. Bianca claimed it was due to VIP prioritization, Mitchell said. Correct, Julia replied. But it turns out the VIP, Mr. Joel Davidson, was a friend of a regional VP. No official ranking, no security classification. Mitchell leaned back, disgusted. And the woman in 4A, Karen Langford. No elite status, no relation to anyone on staff. She simply refused to move, and our staff let her. Daniel Wu, general counsel, jumped in. Karen's statements were racially charged. We confirmed from multiple passengers that she said things like people like her and stay in her little seat. Mitchell's jaw tightened. Flight attendant Emily Cross initially claimed Elise raised her voice, but body cam-style footage from a passenger shows otherwise. Elise stayed composed, and the crew still removed her. Daniel nodded. They claimed Karen felt unsafe and that it was a risk to keep Elise on board. Mitchell's voice was ice. Because a white woman didn't want to sit next to a black woman who politely asked for space. No one spoke. Outside the conference room, whispers had already begun across the company. Slack threads lit up with angry messages from younger employees. Diversity committees demanded answers. Customer support tickets quadrupled overnight. Board members started requesting early calls. The phrase systemic failure appeared in 2 internal memos and at least 1 legal brief. But what worried Mitchell more was public perception. The story was no longer about just Elise Monroe. It had become about them. In a private Slack channel, Julia wrote, "We need a sacrificial wall. Full accountability. The public won't settle for quiet suspensions." Mitchell agreed. By end of day, disciplinary notices were issued. Bianca Ford, lounge agent, terminated James Delaney. Lounge lead, terminated Emily Cross. Lead flight attendant, terminated Paul Hardin. Cabin supervisor, terminated Gordon Riles. Gate manager, terminated Derek Mason and Nathan Sterlin. Support staff, suspended pending further investigation. Aerolux's HR director, Marcia Bell, also resigned, citing irreconcilable concerns over policy enforcement and cultural climate. Meanwhile, Elise received the email she'd been waiting for from Aerolux Executive Office, subject official resolution and apology, Dr. Monroe. On behalf of Aerolux Airlines, I offer our deepest and unequivocal apologies for the events of Flight 2187. We have concluded our internal investigation. It is clear that the actions taken by our staff were unjustified, inappropriate, and did not align with the values we claim to uphold. As a result, several employees have been terminated. A public statement will be released shortly. In addition, we have attached the terms of restitution, including full reimbursement for all travel expenses, lifetime executive premier status, a settlement package for emotional and reputational damages. Finally, we would like to explore a long-term partnership supporting women of color in aviation and STEM through initiatives in your name. Sincerely, Mitchell Crane, CEO, Aerolux Airlines. Elise read it in silence, then closed her laptop and sat still, hands folded. It wasn't satisfaction she felt. It was sobriety. This wasn't a victory. This was a reckoning. Back at Aerolux, the PR team drafted a public apology. They debated whether to publish it immediately or wait until after the weekend. Mitchell overruled them. "We move now," he said, "or it's just more silence." That afternoon, Aerolux posted across all platforms to our customers and the public. "We failed. The treatment of Dr. Elise Monroe aboard Flight 2187 was unacceptable. She was removed from her rightful seat after being subjected to discrimination and mishandled protocol. This should never have happened. We have taken decisive action against the individuals responsible and are initiating a full review of our training, policies, and cultural environment. We are committed to ensuring this moment becomes a turning point, not just for our company, but for our industry." We thank Dr. Monroe for her dignity, her strength, and her willingness to hold us accountable. Aerolux Airlines. The post went viral in under an hour. Some praised the honesty, others called it too little, too late. But across feeds and threads, one thing was clear. The story wasn't about just Elise anymore. It was about every seat taken unfairly, every voice quieted in favor of convenience, every silent witness who wished they'd spoken sooner. Now, Elise's voice echoed in boardrooms, in HR policies, in training programs, and in people who, finally, understood. The Aerolux headquarters in Charlotte had been redesigned to project confidence, floor-to-ceiling glass, brushed steel elevators, artwork that tried too hard to be both edgy and expensive. Elise Monroe had walked through more impressive lobbies. But what made this one memorable wasn't the decor. It was the fact that they'd once asked her to step aside. Now, they were asking her to step in. She arrived 15 minutes early, escorted by a young assistant with trembling hands and apologetic eyes. "Mr. Crane is expecting you upstairs," the assistant said, "and the full executive team is assembled." Elise nodded, calm and precise in a slate-gray suit. No entourage, no media, no visible nerves, just presence. She rode the elevator in silence, the faint hum a sharp contrast to the storm she'd weathered just days before. At the 23rd floor, the elevator opened to a conference room of glass and chrome, where Mitchell Crane, Julia Reyes, and Daniel Wu stood waiting. Their expressions were composed but not performative. They looked like people who had slept poorly and learned something the hard way. Mitchell extended his hand. "Dr. Monroe." Elise shook it, cool and firm. "Let's talk." They seated her at the head of the table. She didn't hesitate to speak. "Before we begin, let's be clear, I'm not here for an apology. You've given one. Publicly. That part's done." Mitchell nodded. "Understood. I'm here," Elise continued, "because this moment has weight, and you don't get to offload that weight with cash and platitudes." Daniel opened a folder. "We'd like to walk you through the restitution package." Elise raised a hand gently. "You can email the terms. What I want to hear now is how this airline plans to make this more than a PR cycle." Julia leaned forward. "We're restructuring our passenger grievance protocols, reviewing the entire conflict resolution framework from boarding to deplaning. We've already started implicit bias retraining." "Good," Elise said, "but not enough." She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded document. "This," she said, sliding it across the table, "is a partnership proposal." Mitchell's eyes flicked to the header, "The Monroe Equity Initiative." "Here's what I want. An annual scholarship fund, $100,000 minimum for women of color pursuing aviation, STEM, or public service careers. A national campaign spotlighting travelers who've experienced discrimination in travel. Co-funded by Aerolux and curated by independent voices. A seat on your diversity advisory board, not honorary, voting, and a formal sponsorship for Curaloop's Equity in Access project as part of your community impact commitments." Daniel blinked. "That's substantial." "It's a beginning," Elise said. Mitchell looked at her, steady. "You're serious about this not being just about you?" Elise smiled, small, clear, unflinching. It never was. Silence fell for a moment, the kind of silence that comes when truth has been spoken plainly, without anger or embellishment. Then Mitchell nodded. "You'll have our full support, on every point. Then we're aligned." Elise replied. Julia added, "We'd also like to publicly recognize your leadership, perhaps a joint announcement. No headlines with my face on them." Elise interrupted. "This isn't about branding me. This is about changing you." Julia nodded, chastened. Elise stood. One meeting was enough. She hadn't come to negotiate. She had come to anchor something permanent in the place that once tried to erase her. At the door, she paused. "One more thing," she said, turning back. "There are thousands of passengers who won't ever go viral, who won't have witnesses or cameras or public outrage behind them. Make sure your policies protect them, too, not just people like me." Mitchell looked down, then up. "We will. She left without a backward glance. Downstairs, as she stepped outside into the soft North Carolina sunlight, Amira was waiting by a cab. "How'd it go?" she asked. "They listened," Elise said. For once, they listened. She didn't smile, but her eyes held something brighter than triumph. Clarity. The cab pulled away from the curb. Behind her, Aerolux would move forward with new policies, new voices, and a permanent reminder etched into their systems. You can't silence dignity. You can only reckon with it. It had been 6 weeks. 6 weeks since Flight 2187. 6 weeks since Elise Monroe had walked off that plane stripped of her rightful seat, but never her dignity. In the time since, Aerolux Airlines had issued not just a formal apology, but a corporate transformation. The Monroe Equity Initiative launched with headlines across Forbes, Fast Company, and Aviation Today. Scholarships opened. The Curaloop partnership was live. Policy reforms rolled out in waves from lounge training to gate assignments to in-flight conflict de-escalation built with real accountability. And the public remembered. Not because Elise had shouted, but because she hadn't needed to. Now, seated in 1A on a flight from Atlanta to San Francisco, an invitation-only diversity summit hosted by the Federal Aviation Council, Elise settled in quietly. The cabin was the same as it had been before walnut panels, ivory leather, the faint scent of lemon-scented cloth, but something had changed. She could feel it. The flight attendant, a young black woman named Renee, approached her seat. "Dr. Monroe," she said softly, with a smile that didn't carry tension or fear. "We're honored to have you on board today." Elise nodded. "Thank you." Renee leaned in slightly. "I just wanted to say what you did. We all felt it. Flight crews, agents, staff who never had a voice." Elise placed a hand on her arm, then carry it forward. "Use it." Renee's eyes glistened. She nodded and stepped away. Halfway through the flight, Elise pulled out her tablet. Not to review speeches, not to write testimony, just to journal. There's something holy about quiet justice, not the kind that makes headlines, but the kind that rewrites procedures, ensures young girls won't be removed for being confident, and lets dignity board the plane before privilege does. Today, I sat down in my seat. No whispers, no redirections, no apologies. Just a name called, a door opened, a path made clear. She closed the tablet and breathed in. When the wheels touched down in San Francisco, Elise didn't rush off. She let the cabin empty first. The flight crew smiled, every one of them meeting her eyes. At the aircraft door, Renee waited. "Oh," she said suddenly, "there's something for you." She handed Elise a simple envelope. Inside was a handwritten card, Dr. Monroe, "for what you taught us about grace, courage, and standing tall even when the world tries to seat you small. This isn't a thank you. This is a welcome." The women of Aerolux. Elise held the card close for a moment, then walked into the bright California morning, where a car waited to take her to a panel titled "Redesigning Systems That Never Included Us." She didn't need to prepare. She'd lived it. She lost her seat, but she never lost her voice. And in the end, her voice changed everything. Elise Monroe didn't yell. She didn't demand. She simply stood her ground, and in doing so, forced an entire airline to confront the ugly truths it tried to hide behind protocol and polish. This wasn't just her victory. It was a spotlight on every quiet injustice, every seat stolen without notice, every apology that came too late. What happened on Flight 2187 wasn't an isolated incident. It's what happens when power protects privilege instead of principle. But Elise turned that moment into a movement. She fought not for vengeance but for equity, for every woman who was told to sit down, for every black traveler who was told they didn't belong, for every person who's ever been treated like a problem instead of a passenger. So, let this story linger. Let it challenge. Let it remind us dignity doesn't need permission, and justice doesn't wait quietly. What would you do in Elise's seat if this story touched your heart? Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more powerful, real-life inspired stories. We'll see you in the next flight of truth.